Hello, it's Robert Schwimmer, and welcome to my channel where we explore above and below the sea and from the air. Located along the desolate Pacific Ocean shoreline of what is now the Vandenberg Space Force Southern Base are the remains of this architectural colonial revival structure on the coastal terrace that is only visited mainly by base personnel or observed by passengers on the Pacific Surfliner train. It sits in contrast to the modern space rocket launch facilities close by, including Space Launch Complex 6, also known as Slick 6, that was constructed in 1966 and upgraded between 1979 and 1989 for the Space Shuttle polar orbit. The launch of Space Shuttle Discovery was scheduled in 1986. However, everything came to a halt early in 1986 following the loss of the Space Shuttle Challenger accident. The fallout of the tragedy resulted in the United States Air Force pulling out of using the shuttle for military payloads. Okay, now let's take a walk back in time. In order to support the Space Shuttle program, the United States Air Force had developed plans to construct a 2.5-mile road connecting the ramp constructed as the former United States Coast Guard Lifeboat Rescue Station and Lookout, Point Arguello, with the Coast Road. The project location is approximately 1.8 miles east of Point Arguello and located on the coastal terrace south of the Southern Pacific Railroad tracks and Sudden Road. The purpose of this development is to allow efficient and economical transport of the Space Shuttle's external tanks to the Slick 6 launch complex. Since the undertaking involved historic structure, two reports shed light on our mystery structure in great detail. The most detailed account is found in the report titled The Former U.S. Coast Guard Lifeboat Rescue Station and Lookout Tower, Point Arguello, California, by David Gebhard and David Bricker from the University of California. Fortunately, I was able to locate the original images from the report to share in this video and tell the story. Before we take a deeper dive into the history of the Lifeboat Rescue Station, I want to share that between Point Conception, also referred to mariners from the 19th century as the Cape Horn of the Pacific, up to Point Sal is California's Central Coast shipwreck graveyard. There are many shipwreck casualties. Some of the most prominent ones were the U.S. Navy auxiliary steambark Edith, lost in 1849, the passenger steamship Harvard in 1931, passenger steamship Santa Rosa in 1911, the sidewheel passenger steamship Yankee Blade in 1854, and then the Honda Naval Disaster, which resulted in the loss of 7 U.S. Navy destroyers in 1923. I'll leave you a link to my video on the disaster that occurred actually 101 years ago this month. and the loss of the U.S. Coast Guard cutter McCulloch in 1917. I also have a video on her history and loss that includes serving at the Battle of Manila Bay under Commodore George Dewey. On July 22, 1935, the U.S. Coast Guard purchased the 4.5-acre parcel from the Sudden Ranch for $5,000, upon which the U.S. Coast Guard Lifeboat Rescue Station and Lookout, Point Arguello, was to be built. An examination of the coastal region in this area turned out to be only feasible place to locate a rescue facility. The shore at this point turns briefly northward, then resumes an eastward extension. Therefore, because of the curvature, an open cove was provided. The site was near Point Arguello and Point Pedernales, that motor rescue boats could reach a distressed vessel in a reasonable amount of time. Note the following photographs were taken in 1980 for the report, after the station was decommissioned and no longer maintained. The successful bidder to build the 2.5-story headquarters and barracks building with basement and a garage went to the Everett Building Company of Lompoc for $42,643. The project was started on February 21, 1936, with the completion at the end of November. During the construction period, a contract to the Line Brothers of Los Angeles to dig a much-needed well. That same year, a 60-foot-high open metal flag tower was built. With the completion of the headquarters barracks building, the facility was now in operation, though the station still did not have a lookout tower, nor needed boathouse, dock, and launching ramp. A 38-foot motor lifeboat and truck trailer was sent down from San Francisco. This is an example of a U.S. Coast Guard motor lifeboat of that period. This was the sole craft at the station until a dory was added in 1937. The only method of launching the 38-foot boat was by backing up the trailer into the water and then through a winch on a truck, pulling it onto the trailer or putting it into the water. The next addition to the station was the lookout and watchtower, which was built in 1937 and operational on March 11, 1938. It was constructed by Fred J. Early, Jr. of San Francisco, and its metal base was prefabricated in Pennsylvania by the Bethlehem Steel Company. A bid of $105,000 by Shannon Brothers of Los Angeles was accepted for the boathouse and dock with its launching platform and marine railway. A construction crew of 15 to 20 men had to build the road from the upper shelf of land where the headquarters and barracks building was located to the lower bench before work could be done on the dock and launchway. It became a very difficult task building the dock, launchway, and boathouse and marine railway since the breakwater had not been built yet. The construction was finally finished around March of 1938. When the boathouse was finished, 2 gasoline-driven winches and a gasoline-driven dynamo to generate electricity were installed. 3 new boats were purchased to replace those that had been in use since 1936. These included a 38-foot motor lifeboat, a 25-foot motor surf boat, and a 25-foot surf boat. When the boathouse was in operation, there were 13 surfmen at the station under the command of Lieutenant William E. Peterson. The boathouse launching ramp provides an important chapter in the history of marine railways. Its configuration of 3 pairs of track which converge, but remain separate with a more highly developed layout than the double track system. On August 11, 1938, Raul Conning Company of Los Angeles bid for $165,000 was granted to build the granite rock breakwater. The 450-foot L-shaped breakwater was completed on February 10, 1939. The building of the rescue station borrowed their architectural imagery from the colonial revival. All the buildings, including the small lookout tower, watch house, were sheathed in white paint wood shingles. Traditional 12-light sash windows, together with dark green paint wood shutters, the final colonial touch. Balustrated single-story porch, wood columns and piers at the front dormers, and round-headed windows in the gabled roof. Internally, all the buildings were bare and simple, but again, such features as the 12-lighted casement windows and the 6-panel doors convey a sense of early 18th century center of New England architecture. The station's logs reveal that activities generally were quiet between 1936 and 1941. The most important marine casualties worth noting was the sinking of the SS Long Eagle after colliding with the USS Crosby off Point Arguello on April 3, 1940, and the grounding of the SS Iowan at Government Point, south of Point Conception, on June 13, 1941. With the entrance of the United States into World War II on December 7, 1941, the situation drastically changed for the U.S. Coast Guard station. I will put a link to my video, California at War. On December 26, the 1st and 3rd platoons of Company M160 Infantry moved onto the reservation. The last entry in the station's logbook notes that there were now 16 Coast Guard personnel at the station and 34 enlisted men of the U.S. Army. During World War II, several buildings were added to the station to accommodate coastal military operations between 1943 and 44. These included a single-story cottages, a long barracks building, a refrigeration building, kennels, a second garage building, and several smaller structures. The post-1941 history of Point Arguello Rescue Station illustrates the gradual loss of its lifeboat rescue activities. The Coast Guard continued to operate the station during World War II, though its use was more than a coastal defense base, part of the nearby Camp Cooke, than a rescue station. On September 8, 1952, the station was officially decommissioned. On February 10, 1958, the station was transferred to the U.S. Navy. In May of 1958, South Camp Cooke, which included the Coast Guard station, was commissioned as the Naval Missile Facility, Point Arguello. On July 1, 1964, the Naval Missile Facility at Point Arguello was transferred to the United States Air Force. 2 years later, Vandenberg Air Force Base acquired the Sudden Ranch from the Sudden Estate Company. From this point on, the building comprising of the former station was abandoned. Although the boathouse and dock were removed that once provided access for the barges to deliver the Space Shuttle's solid rocket boosters, today it still provides access to deliver rockets for the continued legacy of launches at Space Launch Complex 6, or Slick 6. During the Space Shuttle program, there were dedicated ships that were purpose-built to recover the solid rocket boosters, including one for Vandenberg. The rumor is it was sold for $1 to the United States Navy. In 2002, I had the good fortune to be a co-principal investigator working off the MV Independence, conducting a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, survey of the bulk carrier Pac Baroness that was sunk in a collision off Point Conception in 1987. Maybe a future video. Fortunately, today, the Vandenberg Space Force Base personnel have taken pride in refurbishing the headquarters and barracks building. In 2019, I had the opportunity to document some of the interior rooms. Let's take a tour. I certainly hope you enjoyed the little-known history and visit to the U.S. Coast Guard Lifeboat Rescue Station and Lookout Tower Point Arguello, as well as some little-known space shuttle history along California West Coast shoreline. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. That helps me understand what content interests my subscribers. Hey, and if you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing, where we explore above and below the sea and from the air. Thank you.